Hey there, Jason here from Off the Beaten Path, about to head off the beaten path up into the Victorian High Country for 2 days. Just aired down and about to take this SEC track just south of Lake Buffalo, about 25 k's south of Myrtleford in Victoria, and head up into the High Country for some adventures. So here we are, we're heading off on the SEC track, which departs off of the Buffalo River Road at approximately where Rose River Road joins the Buffalo River Road, and we're heading east along that track. It's a pretty easy gravel two-wheel drive track, really, pretty much all the way. You can see there the bush has been heavily affected by the bushfires, and given we're only sort of 15-20 k's south of Myrtleford, it shows you how close the bushfires actually did come to Myrtleford and other regional towns. It's quite amazing. The more you get up into the high country, you can still see nearly a year later now the effects of the bushfires and what a large area they did actually impact. Obviously the footage here has been stitched together a little bit just to show some sections of the track, because it is a decently long drive, and I don't think anybody wants to watch a video of me driving on a gravel road for 20 minutes. So it's really just here to show some different sections. As you get a little bit further along, it's a great spot actually to get some really good views of Mount Buffalo. I did try and take some footage and some stills, but they didn't really come out, so you won't see them in the video. You might just have to go for a drive for yourself and enjoy the sights and sounds. And then once you get to the junction of the SEC track and before the start of Goldie Spur, the Yarrabulla Creek track sort of goes off from there. It's not marked on the HEMA maps, it is marked on some of the topo maps, and it's a little hard to find. As you can see, the track's fairly overgrown. I think when I drove this was filmed in January of 2021. I don't think the track had very much traffic at all. It had been a little bit wet. I have driven this track several times, and you'll see here I take the chicken track around the bog hole because I have known vehicles to get stuck in those bog holes. There's often bits of wood and who knows what in the bottom of those where people have diffed out. So given I was by myself on this trip, I didn't particularly want to have to do a solo recovery, so took the chicken track and drove around it. That seemed like the prudent thing to do. Feel free to take a different path if you head out and explore this track for yourself. Came along here and could see it looks like an alternative track cut through on the left there, and I was wondering what that was for, and I thought I'd do the right thing and stay on the main track. And as you can see, I've discovered the reason for that alternative track. So again, this particular trip I did have my chainsaw with me, but given the other track was already pushed through, I decided to just reverse up and take that track and take the easier route rather than spending half an hour trying to clear that. As you can see, it took a while there to get the tyres up out of the ruts and follow this alternative track that's been pushed through. One of the things I love about driving this track, as I said, I've driven it a couple of times now, is there's a massive amount of variety along this track. It changes markedly as you work your way through. So this initial section sort of follows the Yarrabulla Creek. It's fairly level. There's some sections like that of some decent soft rutted sections with some bog holes, and the depth of the mud varies with the weather, of course, so you never quite know what you're going to get. except if it has been raining, you can certainly bank on the fact that those bog holes are going to be interesting and challenging. Coming up fairly soon, I think. You can see these ruts here have dried out nicely. This particular bog hole is usually not too bad, but I think the next one is the one where I've driven this track with a few people and they've often diffed out there as well. Might be coming up. But yeah, along this level section you follow the Yarrabulla Creek, and it's by and large a pretty easy drive. You can see the bush starting to recover here from the bushfire damage, and the amount of deadfall and everything around, and just the amount of undergrowth that's regrown already. I think this next bog hole here is the one I was thinking of, where I've known a few friends to get stuck in this particular bog hole. Does tend to be reasonably deep. I personally haven't been stuck, so I did decide to drive it on this particular trip, even though I was solo, and came through again. I think it's one of the advantages of driving an IFS vehicle. You don't necessarily need the really big tyres to have the clearance underneath. You may not have the suspension travel that the solid axle vehicles have, but for these particular types of tracks that's less of an issue. So once you sort of get past the track, there's it undulates a little bit, climbs up and down, and there's a few little river crossings of little tributaries. They're not actually the Yarrabulla Creek, but there are other little streams that sort of feed down into it. Generally speaking, on this section of the track, traction's good, and again it's a pretty easy drive, and usually nice and scenic through the bush as well. You can see here we're just coming up on the first of those little creek crossings. These are not something you ever usually need to get out and walk. You can usually see the bottom, as you can see on the camera there, pretty readily. They're really much deeper than that, but again you can see how much undergrowth along the track and even in the centre of the track has occurred. And we're just approaching now another of these little creek crossings. So this one, from memory, you can see there a fall that somebody has fortunately cleared. This one has a bit of an interesting exit. Again, the camera, as always, doesn't really do it justice, but that left side is pretty vertical. You can see someone's done a little bit of track building there to build it up. In some cases the approaches to these little river crossings can be reasonably steep as well. But all in all, look, it's not a bad track to head out and explore. You can do it in a couple of hours, and it gets when you get to the end of it, it actually joins onto the Yarrabulla track, which you could turn left onto and head back towards Goldie Spur, and from there back into Port Punker if you wanted to just make a shorter trip of things. And this must be almost the last of the little stream crossings. A little bit rocky, a little bit rutted, but by and large it's pretty comfortable drive. You can see there, the overhanging branches have just collected the camera. I did stop at that point and readjust it. Oh, we've got at least one more. Yeah, again, you can see this is nice and shallow, and you just drive down a little bit before heading back out the other side. Pretty sure that pause there was because I got out and took some photos in the river. And yeah, this is a little bit of a steeper climb. You can see the angle on the bonnet there as the car lifts up, but again, plenty of traction. Just let the car do the work, and it's still a pretty easy drive. Once you leave the lower portion of the track, you start climbing up the mountain from there, and it starts off gradual and just kind of gets steeper and steeper and steeper, and you've got a very, very long climb. So this is actually the beginning of the climbing section. It's a steady incline, and traction here varies on this particular trip. Traction was really good, the ground was really firm. I have driven up here after rain and it's been very soft, and traction hasn't been nearly as good. So that's something to keep in mind. This track, like all, conditions will vary. And you can see one of the steeper sections, like this is by no means the last climb, but it's one of the steepest climbs on this track. And I've had at least 2 occasions where I've tried to drive this and not made it up, simply because of how soft the track was and the lack of traction. The other challenge with this is if you were driving it when it was soft and that lack of traction, as you can see, any decent sized trees are quite a long way away from the edge of the track, so trying to winch and actually get your vehicle up would be somewhat challenging. It's pretty rocky, so it's definitely a good steady low range climb. Just take your time and let the car and the gearing do their work. You can see some evidence there of some sort of ruts forming in the track, and that's probably a function of when there has been rain and it's been considerably softer than what it was at this particular time. See, just after we crest this hill here, there's another hill in the distance there, and the track does climb up that hill as well, so it just kind of keeps going and going. There's another 2 or 3 good solid climbs on this section of track before you actually start heading down again. And all in all, this track takes usually a couple of hours, so obviously there's some long sections that I've cut out left for you to enjoy when you explore the track yourself. Get out there. Looking at the trees here on this hill in particular, you can really see the ferocity of the bushfires when they've come through here and just stripped everything, and the amount of work that's had to be done to get these tracks back open. Keeping in mind this is a good 12 months after the bushfires have come through this area. Once again, this section may not be as steep as that earlier climb, but it's pretty much as long, and it's probably a little bit rougher. You can sort of see the rocks and ruts and things. It's definitely a workout, particularly on a hot day for the cars. At the moment, pretty much all my videos are shot from the vehicle mounted GoPro. I'm trying to get somebody to come along with me and maybe film some external shots and do a bit more of that myself, but I'd love some feedback on what you think of the video style, and does watching video shot from a GoPro on a vehicle work for you guys. You can see here this tree's actually been here for a while. I've driven under this a few times. It's a little bit cozy, but the Pajero fits comfortably enough. You can probably just hear the leaves on the roof rack there. I have seen a 200 series fit under there, so I don't know how close that is. He must have breathed in. And look, as you can see, there's another climb there that was coming up. So right here we're just coming up to the end of this Yarrabulla Creek track, where it joins onto the Yarrabulla track. So when we get here, we're turning right to head south down towards Mt Selwyn, but you could just as easy choose to turn left and head north along the Yarrabulla track and then onto Goldie Spur and back into Port Punker. That would probably take you no more than 45 minutes or so. Now a little bit further along, this is just on the way up to Mt Selwyn, one of the hills that I came across there. I managed to get an external shot of the vehicle climbing up the hill. And this is a little bit further around the south side of Mt Selwyn, having finished the Yarrabulla track and making my way around the Mt Selwyn Summit track. Again, those tracks around the south side of Mt Selwyn can be very soft and muddy, so it depends on the conditions. And this is right at the top of the Mt Selwyn Summit track, just coming up to the summit. That track itself is a pretty easy drive. It's just this last little section here that's got a few wombat holes and makes it interesting. Now I did take a little bit of footage up there, but it didn't really work out. So here's a couple of stills from the top of Mt Selwyn. Well worth the effort to get up there. Some great views, and you can certainly appreciate the areas, the size of the area affected by the bushfires. And now we're heading off back down from the Mt Selwyn Summit. So thanks for watching the video. Give it a like if you liked it. Love for you to subscribe to the channel, and also be very pleased to see some comments down below on any constructive feedback you've got for the style of video. Does it work being shot from a GoPro? Is there something else you'd like to see? Thanks again. Have a great day.